You're just too good to be true.
A funny story from high school or college? Funny story about college. We had a couch on our front porch. Did I tell you? I think I might have told you the story already. And I went to school at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and we had this couch on our front porch. And all the time, homeless people or travelers would not all homeless, but a lot of travelers would come and just sleep on the couch in the middle of the night. So you wake up and go to class in the morning, you open your front door, and there'd be like 2 dogs and like 2 people sleeping on your front porch that you didn't know. It wasn't that big a deal, but the guy who was in the room right next to the front porch didn't like it because he could hear them in the night, and he always complained about it. So randomly, long story short, there was this like mini stupid riot in our college town, and like 1 block over there was a bonfire in the middle of the street, and so my friend and I put on like our ski goggles and put like towel or shirts around our faces, and we went and carried the couch over there and threw it on the bonfire, and like 500 people cheered us, and we were like high-fiving strangers, and it was a great picture of us with like the flames and the couch behind us. It was like this stupid story, but you know, something you would only get away with in college because it was technically illegal, obviously, to do that, but we didn't get in trouble because we covered our faces. Stupid, but fun.
So I picked some stories that deal with homecoming week. I have a positive and a negative one. So the positive one is probably my greatest homecoming ask I did, which was I worked at a restaurant in high school, and I decided to do a kind of cool, crazy ask for this girl. We had a walk-in freezer, so I took a paint bucket, filled it halfway with water, and then laminated a card and froze it in there, and then added more water, so the card was frozen in the middle of this giant cylinder of ice. And then I went to her house and left the ice block there with a hammer and a chisel, and then I doorbell ditched her, and then so she had to chisel through the ice, although it didn't really work that well, and so her mom like boiled water to try to like melt it, and basically when they got to the center of it, there was a card that says, "Hey, now that we've broken the ice, will you go to homecoming with me?" So I felt pretty good about that. But also that same homecoming was not so great because I was the guy who was organizing the limo for all my friends, and I thought it'd be really cool to pick up my date last, and then the limo would be filled with all of our friends or whatever, and we'd like go to each person's house or whatever. Unfortunately though, that was not great because we were 45 minutes late to pick up my date, and she thought I stood her up, and then so I had to go into her house with her whole family staring at me, and that was not a fun experience. So word to the wise, just everybody meet somewhere and get in the limo. It's probably what you guys do anyway. And that homecoming was kind of like fine, but it was also the year that Foothill High School got in trouble for salacious dancing, and so our homecoming had no hip hop and the lights on the whole time.
A story from high school. For when I went to prom, my prom day was this girl that I actually, we really didn't get along in 9th and 10th grade, and then all of a sudden in 11th grade, we started just becoming friends and hanging out, I think because we both grew up. And then when she said yes and asked her and everything like that, and then on the day of prom, she was like super, super late to when we were supposed to take pictures and everything like that. So I was just sitting there with like the corsage in my hand, and I looked really sad. But then she showed up and everything was cool and fine after that.
So it was actually my very first date, and I was super nervous. I got all dressed up. I had a tie on. I had matched my date's dress, and so she said, "Hey, let's go get food before the dance." And I was like, "That sounds great." And so she said, "Let's go out to dinner before the dance," and I said, "That sounds great." And she said, "Let's get sushi," and I loved sushi. My cousin made sushi all the time, and so I was like, "This perfect." We got to sushi. I had money for a tip ready. I was going all out for this date for this girl, and we start eating. Food comes to the table, and my throat starts to feel kind of funny, and I don't really know what's happening. And so because I was so nervous, and because my first ever date, I was like, I'm just gonna keep eating. And so I keep eating, and my throat feels more and more funny, and I just think that I'm nervous because my date's really cute and there's a dance coming up and I don't know how to dance, and like all these thoughts are running through my mind. I'm just eating to like fill the void of like to stop being so nervous. And I'm like loosening my tie and like unbuttoning my top button because it's so warm all of a sudden. And then I get up and we're ready to leave, and I'm not really thinking about, I tipped probably like half the bill because I didn't know what I was doing because I was so nervous, and I was like, here, and so then we walked away, went to the dance, and it was fine. And 2 weeks later, I go to get my allergies tested, and I'm allergic to fish. So I had no idea that I was ever allergic to sushi. I guess when I had it before with my cousins, it was different. So that's how I figured out I was allergic to sushi.
Okay, so one of my favorite memories from high school happens to be one that I really hope no one recreates. So do as I say, not as I do, because it's about my senior prank. So senior pranking at our school was like a really big deal, and it was a big tradition. And a little known fact about me is that I love a good prank. And so I wanted my senior prank to be like the best one ever. And so my friend had a chicken farm. And so what we did is we took 4 chickens from her chicken farm, and we got up really early, and we brought the chickens to school and we let them loose in the school as our senior prank. But the best part about it was that we had labeled the chickens with a little collar, and it said one chicken was labeled number 1, the other was number 2, the other was number 4, and the other was number 5. So when Admin was running around trying to grab the chickens, they had actually captured all of them, but they spent all day looking for chicken number 3. So that was one of my favorite memories. And again, I do not condone this behavior, but it was pretty hilarious.
Okay, so I grew up here in San Ramon. My parents still live in the house just down the street between Cal High and Pine Valley. I went to Pine Valley and walked to school, and then I walked to school at Cal High. I was a 4-year varsity athlete on the track team. I was a high jumper, a white guy with hops, and I took a lot of honors and AP classes, and had a pretty normal high school experience. You know, friends, hung out, did homework. Sounded a lot like a Doherty kid. I wasn't like a jock or a nerd, kind of both, I guess. And then once I got done with school, I went to Cal, go Bears. And now I'm here, teaching math.
So I was a pretty like nerdy, quiet kid in high school. My main focus was definitely school and then dance. I was completely obsessed with dance and did like 15 hours a week since I was 3, and so that was basically what my whole social life revolved around. I had friends through dance, but I didn't really have a lot of friends at school. So freshman year rolls around, I was pretty terrified to go to high school because it was all these new kids that I didn't know, and homecoming week happens, and you know, there was a homecoming princess and prince that were going to be announced, so we all cast our votes and then go to the rally on a Friday afternoon. And I remember vividly, because it was such a terrifying moment, during the rally they announced the homecoming princess, and they said, and for freshman year it will be Katie Carlin, which was me. And my first thought, very honestly, was that this was a prank. There were a bunch of movies out at the time, like She's All That and all these wonderful like early 2000s, late 90s movies where there were these nerdy girls who were selected to be prom queen or homecoming queen as a prank. And so I was 100% convinced that that was what had happened. So I got up, I received my silly little crown, felt totally embarrassed about it, and then later that day, I found out that my brother and all of his friends, who were 2 years older than I was, had stuffed the ballots. So I won an election based off of very illegal means. But it was a really cool, sweet thing for them to have done.
So in high school, I went to Monte Vista, and I was like a middle of the road kid. I wasn't a super academic person, but but I cared. Like I cared about my grades. I was raised in the country, so I had kind of these different values, I think, than a lot of the kids at Monte Vista. I had a boyfriend my junior and senior year, and that was kind of like a defining like adolescent moment for me, was like who was I, and then who was I when I was in a relationship with someone. I kind of became like an art kid my junior year, and I found like great comfort in the art room. And the boy that I dated in high school went to UC Santa Barbara as a freshman, and I stayed and did community college for 2 years, and we stayed together long distance. And then I got into UC Santa Barbara, and of course thinking like this is my destiny, I went, and we broke up within like 6 months of me having moved there. So I had to take that like crossroad and be like, okay, what am I gonna do? Like, I'm starting over, and I'm not defined by my relationship. And so I just threw myself into the art department, and then I guess we'll get into like how we met, because that came later. I want to know.
I loved high school. I played football, played basketball. I was on the track team. I was involved in leadership for a couple of years. I wrote for the student newspaper. I went to Boys State. I was involved in a couple of courts. I went to all the dances, and I really loved my teachers. I had a really good time. It was a lot of fun. I enlisted in the Army right after my junior year ended, so I wanted to do that, and I used the Army to pay for college.
He's 6 years older than me. 5 years older. Like when I was in 8th grade, he was senior, right? No?
No. You graduated 4 years after me.
Okay. So we had some time apart. But no, I wonder like if we were the same age and at the same school, would we have found each other? And I don't think we would have in high school, because we totally ran in different circles, like socially, all that. Like I was not into the jock thing at all. And we met like right before we graduated. So I don't know, it wasn't like the best timing, because we didn't have that much time together. And I remember feeling like we only have like a month. It was like a month or two before we had to move out and move home. We had already applied to separate, postgraduate schools. So he was going back to LA. I was coming back up to the Bay Area. But we were like hard in love, like really quick. We met at the gym. He worked as the card checker person, the card check-in person at the gym at the apartment complex. We lived in the same apartment complex. And he had seen me, he had seen me the year prior. He asked me out to a formal fraternity event, which I was a little because I was not into the scene. I was an art kid, right? I was with artsy people, kind of introverted. I'm like, oh, I did not go to fraternity parties or sorority parties. And he did. So I was like, well, I don't know what this is gonna be like, but it's like my last shot. I'm graduating in a month, so I better go. So we went, and it was lovely. It was actually really classy. It was a formal affair. It was very nice. It was like a sit down. It was kind of like a wedding. And then we just saw each other every day until we graduated, and then it was so sad when we graduated. So yeah, so then I came here right after I got my credential, and then he came here the next year, and we got married, moved in together. We've been here ever since, and hopefully we'll be the
like the two old geezers here when your kids are kids here. Yeah. We could do this interview again in like 20 years.